Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for tuning in today. I'm just going to give folks a minute to sign on. I will cover a couple of housekeeping items here before welcoming Dr. Roberta Golinkoff to this conversation. So, you may be streaming this from LinkedIn or YouTube or Facebook, wherever you are. If you want to ask a question during this conversation, which I hope you will, or just make a comment, you can type that in the comments beneath wherever you are live streaming this. There is some magic happening on the back end where my colleague Jihan is getting all of those to us. So we'll be keeping an eye on those and we'll be saving time for questions toward the end of our conversation. We will share a recording of this in the next couple of days. This conversation builds on one that I had with Dr. Kathy Hirsch-Pasek a few weeks ago and really is oriented toward this new book that they've just written, re-released together. Einstein never used flashcards. So welcome. We're really happy that you're here. And Roberta, feel free to come off of mute and hop on video and we will dig into the book.
Magic, here
Hi.
I am.
The magic of Zoom.
Yes,
I'm so excited about this conversation. We even before the live stream started, we were like off to the races with new hypotheses.
yes,
But
yes.
before we jump in, I want to make sure people actually have a sense of your bio. I have a feeling people who are tuning in know your work to some extent, and if they don't know your name, their work has certainly been influenced by yours. So I will just read a very brief highlight version of your bio to orient people to your work over the years. So I'll just read this and then we will jump into really discussing the book. So for folks tuning in, Dr. Roberta Golinkoff is Unidel H. Rodney Sharp Professor of Education at the University of Delaware and has her PhD in developmental psychology from Cornell University.
Oh,
Um,
big red.
I almost said that and then I was like, is it Big Red? Because I got confused. Okay.
Big, big red.
Cornell was like my dream school for a while, mostly because I just wanted to be in the Finger Lakes.
Oh,
Um,
Ithaca's gorgeous.
I know, yeah, someday perhaps. Okay, PhD in developmental psychology from Cornell, a member of the departments of psychological and brain sciences and linguistics and cognitive science. She directs the Child's Play Learning and Development Laboratory. Dr. Golinkoff is known for her research on language development, the benefits of playful learning, the effects of media on children, and early spatial development. Her main goal is to bring attention to the importance of language development for children's academic, social, and occupational success. She created the Quills Quick Interactive Language Screener, which we use in both English and for Spanish English bilinguals. I use this in my study. We use it in our lab at University of Maryland to identify children with language issues between 3 and 6 years of age when remediation is most effective. In addition to more than 200 publications, she has authored 16 books and monographs. She also writes books for parents and practitioners, including How Babies Talk from 1999, and the book we're going to really delve into today, Einstein Never Used Flashcards, which has been re-released with lots of updates that are about the continually developing technology landscape that
Yeah,
babies are in today.
yeah.
Um, in addition, Roberta co-founded the Learning Sciences Exchange, a program to unite scientists, journalists, policymakers, entertainment experts, and social entrepreneurs to share the science of early learning with the public. If we're discovering all of these cool things in our labs, how are we making sure that parents and policymakers actually know about them? Most recently, her work with the Playful Learning Landscapes brings physical installations to communities to create the kinds of caregiver-child interactions that we know promote children's well-being. Roberta, welcome.
Gosh, that was a mouthful.
Oh my gosh, and I could have gone on and on, right? That's like the super concise version.
As I like to say, I am a household word in my own home.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, so it's such a treat to get to first talk with Kathy and now talk with you and use the book as the launching point. I think I could probably pick your brain on many, many topics, but
Oh, I love that.
I think we should just go wherever we want to in this conversation. Yeah, but we ended the conversation with Kathy a few weeks ago with a quote from the book that we didn't actually have time for her to fully unpack. So I'm gonna like volley it over to you to sort of um, co-unpack with us. What you say at the end of the book is that the book is joining others that continue the conversation between science and application. And on this call, we've got friends from Hunt Institute, from the National Center for Montessori in the Public Sector, from Trust for Learning. You've got policymakers tuning in, teachers, parents. You write at the end of the book that when these worlds meet, right, the worlds of science and the worlds of application, we will be able to give play back to children, which I just loved so much. So, what do you want folks listening in to know about the science of play?
Oh, first of all, I am thrilled if you are right about who our audience is, and you probably know who you get from who you've had in the past. So I'm not going to doubt you, Ellen. So I think it's wonderful because if I think of myself as taking an interdisciplinary perspective on our field, I always want to include people, for example, from other units. When I used to be in charge of the colloquium series, I would send the word widely because our disciplines are connected by a line that's the size of a hair.
Mm-hmm.
And we really do need to talk to people across disciplines and think policy across disciplines to do what's best for kids. There was a time, and I'm afraid there are still some parents who think this, that play is a four-letter word. No good. Play is so important for children. I mean, it's even important for primates and octopi. Have you seen my octopus friend? I can't eat octopus
Oh,
back, right?
yeah.
Because they
Yep.
appear to be so sentient and playful.
Mm-hmm.
So what's the big deal with play? First of all, we
Mm-hmm.
distinguish between, I put playful learning as the umbrella. Under the umbrella is free play and guided play.
Mm-hmm.
Free play is the stuff that we did that got us in trouble when we were kids. So my parents went out one night, and my brother, who's 5 years younger than I, they had just gotten new carpeting. We thought, it was giving up some fuzz.
Mm-hmm.
But we thought we would help them out by going around and scraping up all the fuzz.
Mm-hmm.
And we presented my parents with a giant ball when they came home. We probably took 10 years off the life of the rug. It was, we didn't know we were kids, right? But
Mm-hmm.
that's free play without supervision. The
Mm-hmm.
kid leads and the kid decides what to do.
Mm-hmm.
But guided play is another type of play. It's where a teacher or a parent or even an older sibling decides they want to teach something to a kid, because guided play typically has some kind of curricular goal, and then follows the kid's lead, sometimes in an environment that they have set up to point in that direction to learn the stuff that they have in mind. And when people engage in guided play with kids, it's fun for the adults and it's fun for the kids.
Mm-hmm.
Lots of what goes on in schools, oh, I hate this, it's still true, of course, is rote learning.
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't really mean that much to the kid. And the teacher is what we call the sage on the stage, who's standing there talking to them an amazing amount of time as opposed to having kids talk. And, how sticky is that learning? I'm into making sticky learning. I want the learning to last and be able to be transfer being the gold standard of education, meaning you take it to new circumstances where it is called for.
Mm.
And if you learn it in a way where you're active, where it's engaging, where it's meaningful to you, it's not just abstract junk that you're told to memorize, where it's iterative, you can keep going back to it, where it's joyful, although it's not always ha, 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 and where it's socially interactive. That's really important for learning. And it doesn't always mean competition between kids. It could be cooperation and collaboration where they work together on a project and learn from each other. It seems like in many schools in America today, we seem not to trust kids to want to learn.
Mm.
And kind of think that you have to open up the head and pour it in for it to stick.
Mm,
And that doesn't make for the most enduring or deepest kind of learning.
mm,
To go deep.
mm. Yeah, I've never heard it put that way, that we don't seem to trust that children want to learn, right? That we as adults think we have this sort of anxiety and we think, oh, we have to
Yeah.
make them learn, as
Yes.
opposed to just trusting that that's actually how they arrive, wanting to learn
But see, some of
exploratory.
that, you're right, Ellen, but some of that is because you might not want to learn either. If you were presented lists to memorize
Mm,
without
mhm,
context, right?
mhm,
But if you think of interesting ways to get the materials before them and to get them operate on the materials, they want to learn.
mhm.
We've kind of stamped it out of kids, that glimmer in the eye. They're so excited. So I talked to some kids today who are excited, but other kids who say, when you're at high school, boring.
Mhm.
So that's a damn shame. It really, sorry to curse, although that's not too bad.
No problem. Yeah, no, this resonates so much with me. I started as a high school teacher, and
Oh,
the very first teaching job that I had, I didn't know this when I said yes to it, but it was a very kind of desks in a row, uniforms on, eyes on the teacher, very, very overly academic and really kind of oppressive school climate. And of course, the kids were like, I'm miserable, right?
right.
And then, classroom management becomes about compliance and
Yes.
controlling children as opposed to, creating a joyful learning environment where everyone's innate curiosity is actually supported. So yeah, resonates a lot with me. And the irony of that, right, which Kathy and I covered, but, is worth just reiterating for people on this call that we exist in a generation where we know the third grade reading scores. We know the disparities for children in language and literacy development. And so then there's this reaction that involves overly creating like these overly academic sort of rote learning environments that are not working. And so how do we as adults, right, hold the kind of the irony of that, but also,
Yeah.
yeah, no, please go ahead.
So no, no, no. I'm so resonating. Um, the first point I wanted to make was when you talked about how you were teaching in high school and everybody sat in rows and there was strict hierarchy. I get students like that in my classes at the University of Delaware.
Mm,
And it always seems to me that the ones who are kept under the tightest reins by the parents are the ones who break out the most.
mhm,
So you're not teaching kids how to engage in self-regulation, how to make good choices for them. If it's all about listening to the sage on the stage.
mhm,
And then when those kids have the opportunity to get away from home, they spend often too much time partying because
mhm,
they're free of those constraints,
mhm,
because they haven't had to think about what's best for me in the long run. It's always been what's best for them,
mhm,
because they're socialized for that I have to please those adults and I have to toe the line with those adults. Okay.
mhm. Yes,
No,
I
go ahead.
I have two things that colleagues have said recently are really jumping to my mind right now. One, we are working closely with colleagues in an incredible childcare center called Urban Sprouts, run by an incredible leader named Alicia Lanier. And we're doing a site visit with them. And she said, well, all you have to do is just start by giving children freedom.
Yeah.
And it was like, is it really that simple, right? How do we think about giving children their freedom? Um, I'm thinking too of an incredible school model called Whole Child. I don't know if you've encountered this model, started in DC by another colleague, Cynthia Robinson Rivers, who serves on the trust board, as does Alicia. And I toured her school downtown, and I was with a group, and we saw these two maybe like 7 or 8 year olds in the hallway. It's a preschool and elementary school model, and these two kids, they just kind of like walked by quietly and they kind of said hi to us. And Cynthia pointed out, she said, what you're seeing here is a really orderly school,
Yeah,
right? We have lots of order, things are organized, it's very calm. But she said the difference is that the children aren't doing that out of fear,
right.
right? So yes, 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 to all of this. And I'm curious for you, where did this start? Like, where did your initial curiosity, what were the initial questions you were interested in? How did you know that this was what you wanted to do? What sparked this for you?
When you say this, I don't know exactly what you mean. You mean my life, my work as a developmental psychologist, or the book? Give me a little more.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I'm kind of interested in all of it, but really this curiosity about children's experiences and how humans learn in these, formative years. What sparked that interest, either in language development or early development? What pointed you in the direction of developmental psychology specifically?
Okay. I've always loved kids, and that sounds so lame, but it's true. I still do. I still can't
Mhm.
go to a public place and see a child and not make Google eyes at them and interact with them. I just
Mhm.
did that the other day at the MoMA. And coincidentally, this little girl, she was 8 months of age. She had an attention span. Like, she discovered me and I made faces. She looked at me longer than I looked at her. She never turned away, very
Mhm. Mhm.
soberly studied me.
Mhm.
Babies are amazing. After
Mhm.
she did that, I would bet you that if she was, taken into a darkened room and we showed her a picture of me with different clothes, etc., and a picture of you, she'd look at you more because she would have encoded what I look like. This is 8 months before language. Okay.
Mhm. Mhm.
I've always been impressed with the things that kids do. And
Mhm.
it's almost like psychology is catching up to the amazing things kids do. In
Mhm.
1996, Jenny Safran, an NSF presidential investigator at the University of Washington, came up with the idea with her colleagues that babies were engaging in statistics. What's
Mhm. Mhm.
statistical learning has now become a major mechanism by which children and adults take in information. And it makes things a lot less mystifying to know that even babies are capable of this. So, what am I talking about? You hear a sentence, "You're a pretty baby," right? Because you hear pretty baby so frequently, you can find those syllables. This is at 6 months of age, especially if using for directed speech.
Mhm.
You can find those syllables and you can recognize that pretty baby comes together as a unit, not with pretty tie, not with pretty dress, but that pretty baby is likely a unit. And that helps you find the words in the speech stream. And it also helps you find the events. We've done research on how babies can see visual events and carve them into units. All of this
Mhm.
is prerequisite to learning language. You have to be able to do this stuff to learn language.
Mhm. Yes. So some of the statistical learning research, when I started reading that, that was one of those moments where, like, as you and I were talking about before we signed on, it's part of why I am so interested in babies specifically, right? These periods before we can even really communicate with language, babies
Yes,
are doing these sophisticated computations to engage
yes,
and to learn. And I feel like we're only still scratching the surface, right?
yes.
About how they're doing it. So yes, that all resonates. So much with me. And the point about attention span. So this is one I'm sure for some of the folks signing in from their affiliation with National Center for Montessori in the public sector. This is one where there's so many misconceptions about children's ability to engage in meaningful play or work, as
Yes, yes,
Montessorians sometimes
yes,
call it, for long periods of time, and
yes,
to do it intently, right? And to not even it's hard to tear them away sometimes, right? But we have this conception, oh, babies or little kids, right? They have really short attention spans, or they can't handle the sort of intense exploration that if we give kids some freedom and some scaffolding, we actually see that they engage in very naturally. So I love that point. And in one of the chapters in the book, one of the things that I really love about the book is the way that you all have condensed really succinctly language development research and how play supports it, and then moving into sort of pre-literacy and literacy and how play can support all of that. And more in the sort of babies and language development and babbling kind of world. In one of your studies, probably in many of your studies, you've filmed babies in a naturalistic interaction as they had a meal with their families. And you were looking for something called a conversational turn. This is, of course, something that we study in my lab too. But I'm really curious about this, looking for that in these naturalistic videos. So tell everybody, what is a conversational turn? Why does it matter? How is it one of these sort of pieces to unlock some of the mysteries of how kids are learning language?
We're taking conversational turns now, except occasionally Roberta will likely interrupt you because, according to Deborah Tannen, I have the New York style of interaction. According to her, and I give my students this to read a little snippet about it. If you don't interrupt, you're not perceived as being interested in what's being said.
Mm-hmm. Interesting.
Yes.
Rachel Romeo, my advisor, worked with a student whose name I am forgetting, but they use Lena to code interruptions in parent-child interactions, and found this did not align with their hypothesis. They thought interruptions would be somehow negatively associated with language development. I can't remember what they actually found, but interruptions were a positive predictor of language development. So yes, please interrupt away. I sense
Oh,
your
cool. I
interest.
really like that finding. I
I will dig it up and email it to you. I'm not
Yes, I
even sure if it was
appreciate it.
published.
It's almost like
Mm.
the kid starts to say something and you recognize where they're going and you're so excited by it that
Mhm.
in many cases you probably reiterate, oh, yes, that is the donkey. Yes, and look at his
Mhm.
ears. Right. So you probably pick it up and restate what the kid is saying.
Mhm.
Not everybody talks to their kids. Okay. Conversational turns are what we do naturally in conversation because we want to be able to hear each other. And if we were both speaking sentences at the same time, we would miss a lot of information.
Mhm.
So I went into these homes at lunchtime. There were actually three families, all somehow linked up to the university. And I would bring a big white screen and I had a hole in it and a cloth over that. And I'd stick my camera lens out and I would watch how they interacted with their child over lunchtime.
Mhm.
The thing that got me going was something I called the negotiation of meaning.
Mhm.
These were pre-verbal kids when we started, but somehow two out of the three moms were able to read the child's signals and figure out what they wanted. A third mother, it was all I could do not to rip off the screen and run over there.
Mhm.
The baby would point to the grapes and the mother would say, oh, yes, you want water.
Mhm.
Now, this particular child didn't talk. She was about 36 months. So it gave me the sense that this is extremely scientific, that if you don't honor, if you don't pick up on what the kid is
Mhm.
saying or trying to say with their nonverbal cues,
Mhm.
that the child isn't going to try to talk that much. Now, the key is I went with a bunch of objects earlier than that and tested the child's comprehension with a bunch of, everyday objects and replicas. The kid was right on target, but the
Mhm.
kid didn't talk. Probably because if the kid talked, the conversation didn't go her way. They probably
Mhm.
talked
Mhm.
about something else and they didn't pick up on it. So
Mhm.
that kind of drove me crazy, but it was informative to me about how the conversations that we have with our kids serve multiple functions. They help the kid make their meaning clear. And I also stipulated in that paper that I think babies know what they want. Like if they're pointing at something and you give them something near it, they'll just keep pointing and complaining.
Mhm.
They often want information, and we know that from Debbie Kemler Nelson's research, because when she had kids pointing, she systematically controlled whether they just said cup or whether they said cup, that's something you drink from. If they just said cup, the kid wanted more and kept signaling.
Hmm. Mm-hmm.
So we share information. It's not all about making requests. There are some very instrumental views of language development that kids just do this because they want stuff. But it's not that. Kids
Mm-hmm.
often ask for the names of things,
Mm-hmm.
as you well know, and ask for more than just the name. Like that's a clock. It keeps time. It tells us when lunchtime. They love to hear people around them offer them information.
Mm-hmm.
Um, there's a woman, I think she went back to Europe. Her name starts with Bigas, who showed Katerina Bigas that the reason kids listen more to people who speak their language is because they get more information,
Mm-hmm.
people they can understand. I thought that was the coolest finding.
Mm-hmm.
So I really do believe that kids are the agents in many ways of their own development. But you have to have adults who will honor your incipient intentions and go along with you. And if you're
Mm-hmm.
lucky enough to have an adult who's trying to draw you out rather than suppress you or ignore you,
Mm-hmm.
you're going to learn more than
Mm-hmm.
if you didn't.
Gosh, there's so much there. I
I
mean,
know. And I don't even know if I answered your question.
no, no, it's good. I'm remembering a presentation that I saw Casey Lou Williams give a couple years ago. And again, I'm not going to remember all the details, but one of the things that he's looking at is how frequently babies' first words are non-words. They're more like interjections. And he finds that I think uh-oh was one of those, I think that might have been at the top of the list. These moments where there's a vocalization or, kind of a quasi word. Um, that, uh-oh contains multitudes, right? It's this sense that like something's gone wrong and we're
Yes,
noticing it
yes,
together, we're in it together. It's this like emotional cue. It's also a cue that everything is okay. So the idea that children are not just engaging in language for sort of a functional labeling, right? But
yes,
to
yes, yes, yes,
benefit from
yes.
all the bonding and the cultural wealth that comes in those moments. Um, yeah, and I will just pause now to remind people that if you have not already put a question in the chat, please go ahead and do that now. We'll fit in as many as we can toward the end, and Jihan is compiling them for us here in the chat. You said something else that I wanted to really emphasize for people because you said it in kind of a baby context, but I think it carries through into, preschool, elementary school
Yeah,
development broadly, this idea of honoring or at least trying to figure out what does the baby actually want and the attunement that that takes on the part of an adult, the
yes,
attention, right? To and also the trust that we have all these myths about children that they're sponges, that they're blobs, that
yes,
they lack the agency that they're clearly exhibiting. That idea of honoring the child's intention. And what you said was that it's highly scientific, right? That it's not just a nice to have. I feel like sometimes when we say things like we're going to meet the
yes,
child where they are,
yes,
it
yes,
sounds sort of warm and fuzzy in a way that it's like, well, yes, it is kind of warm and fuzzy, but it's actually empirically supporting children's learning. Do you want to
absolutely.
say anything more about that before we move on?
Yeah. So how I got turned on to this was I have two sons, and my older son, I can still see it in my mind. It's in the book too. Was wearing a diaper and a t-shirt and went over to the refrigerator and started to gesture. He was about 14 months old. He couldn't say much. And I opened the fridge because I clearly he wanted something in the fridge. And then I took out item after item and watched his reaction. And he just kept pointing until I got to, I can't remember what it was. Maybe it was the jelly. I don't know. And at that point, he calmed down and
Mhm.
I gave him what it was he wanted. But this paper made me go out into the field, this idea, and write a paper on the negotiation of meaning.
Hmm.
Now, if I had been in a big hurry, like we were meeting someone, whatever, I might not have played the game.
Mhm.
Or if I was highly stressed, because I wasn't quite sure how I was going to make a decision to get my older one sneakers versus pay the rent.
Mm-hmm.
But fortunately, I had the time to honor his request to get something in specific in the refrigerator. And most of the people I looked at, the three mothers mostly, did honor the kids' intentions at least some of the time.
Mm-hmm.
And when a child wants something, here's my mouse. Okay, a child wants this and keeps pointing, and finally you give it to the kid, and you say, "Oh, that's my mouse. It runs my computer." Mouse. That's when they learn words
Yes.
because their attention is heightened
Mm-hmm.
to the
Mm-hmm.
object to which the word becomes affixed. So it makes for a great opportunity without even thinking about it. Most people do this to offer the label for the item of interest.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and just to circle back to the point that you made earlier, contrast that example with a child sitting in a classroom bored, their interests are not being followed, and somebody puts the word mouse, up on a screen with a picture, and they're like, ugh, what I want to be doing is outside playing or something. So that I really appreciate how you're unpacking play in this particular way. I worry sometimes, so at Trust for Learning, we think about ideal learning environments for children, built on a foundation of developmental science, a commitment to equity and inclusion. And when we say that play is a foundational principle of ideal learning environments, I worry sometimes that people think, okay, well, we'll give kids, 10 more minutes at recess, or we'll put some extra puzzles in the classrooms
Right,
while they
right,
sit and do
right,
flashcards.
right. So I have to speak. I have to speak.
Please, please.
Okay. So let's just think about mouse. Okay. So you want the kid to learn this is a thing that controls the computer. It's called the mouse. Once they get the concept, imagine if you asked the class to make their own mice.
Mhm,
What do
mhm,
they think a mouse should look like?
mhm,
And they
mhm,
had the materials. That kid would never, ever forget what a mouse is if they got to do that. And I guarantee you that some of their designs would be absolutely brilliant,
mhm.
right?
Yeah.
So there are ways that you can impart information. Now, let's not just think of that as play. In order to make your own mouse, what do you have to do? You have to use your creativity.
Mhm,
You have to take the materials at hand. Maybe you have cardboard, maybe you have, I don't care if you have old newspaper, I don't care, crayons, and a scissors. Now, when you're engaging in those processes to put something together, you're learning the kinds of things that build school readiness. I'm just writing an op-ed with my lab manager, Jenna Leader,
mhm,
because we've been reading about teachers complaining. Even third graders can't zip their coats, can't tie their shoes, can't engage in self-toileting sometimes. What's this? It's because we're not letting kids play. And we're on, I don't want to make this all about screens, but we're on screens too much and they're on screens too much. That's what the teachers blamed it on, screens.
mhm, mhm,
There may be something to that. So
mhm,
we want to let kids play,
mhm,
free play, because they get to practice the skills that they will need when they get into school. They get to learn what they like and who they are.
mhm,
And free play also allows them to work through emotional tangles that they've been in. If you have a kid and you've ever scolded your kid and they turn around and scold their stuffed animal in exactly the same voice you used,
mhm,
they're working it through.
mhm,
Again, just handing children objects is not the same as guided play when you have curricular goals.
mhm,
And guided play is very powerful, and everybody has a good time.
mhm,
It's not just the teacher talking at kids.
mhm, mhm. Yeah, and I'm starting to see some of the questions coming in the chat, and I think some of these are coming from teachers and parents because they're really specific to the sort of in the moment experience. I want to bridge a little bit from the early language world, in which you all write that, babbling is evidence that babies arrive as linguistic geniuses. But getting more into kind of pre-literacy and literacy,
Or
we start to feel this pressure to
yes,
get kids
yes,
reading,
yes,
right? The pressure is real. And what you say in the book, which is kind of building on what you just said, the most important thing you can do for your child is to make reading fun, not
right,
work. Let us repeat this. Reading should be fun, not work.
right, right.
So talk more about that when it comes to reading and literacy specifically.
Okay, so first I have to tell you an anecdote. So a dear friend of mine talked to me at a party. The boy was about 9 or 10, and she said, he's supposed to read a half an hour every night, and it's like torture for us.
Hmm.
Supposed
Hmm.
to read together. And I said, oh, think of all the fun you could have. You could take on voices. You could draw the places you read, I mean, etc. Right? And
Hmm.
then she saw me a month later. She said, we are having so much fun now. So
Hmm.
everything is about how you interpret it. If you interpret reading with your child as a chore, you're going to read like this. So then they went to the school and they found that it was you're just going to go fast and you're not going to interact with your kid. So one of the things I
Hmm.
always emphasize, especially when speaking to parent groups, is have a good time.
Hmm.
Follow that little pointing finger.
Hmm.
Talk about the stuff on the page that you see your kid looking at. And don't stop reading to your kids. 9, 10. Share
Hmm.
books with your kids. It's so exciting. And
Hmm.
then you have stuff to talk about with them.
Hmm.
And ask the questions that aren't on the page. Why do you think he was so mean to that little girl?
Hmm.
Okay. Then what are you talking about? You're talking about social emotional things and how to gain your own regulation and not to do that, right?
Hmm.
There's so much you can get out of books. Now, it's more than that too when you talk about reading. Lord Justice has done some great work where she shows if parents just comment on the letters on the page. Like sometimes, especially like a fairy tale, will have a very embellished first letter. What letter is
Hmm.
that? That's an A.
Hmm.
It's not a
Hmm.
typical A, right? Here, my mother E's coming in.
Hmm.
Um,
Hmm.
you talk to your kids about the letters on the page and about the numbers you see. You don't break up the storyline,
Hmm.
but that helps kids learn about
Hmm.
the letters and the numbers.
Hmm.
They get so much out of being read to. The
Hmm.
storyline, knowing that stories have a beginning,
Hmm.
some conflict or something that arises, and a resolution at the end,
Hmm.
prepares them to read stories in the world.
Hmm.
They get to
Hmm.
know the structure
Hmm.
of stories, helps them learn new words. So,
Hmm.
I was with a kid once who went poof, and then they disappeared. I knew that was a kid who was read to. Who talks like that?
Mm, Oh, I love that.
Right?
No, please.
No, you go.
So at Trust for Learning, we are working on a curriculum for adults that really tries to distill some of these like high level ideal learning principles into virtual modules for educators. Very hard to do, to distill all this insight into something
I'll help.
that is yes, please. And we're working with Beverly Falk at City College of New York, and she has these really wonderful videos. And so we're kind of bringing them together with some of our videos. And one
Great.
of the jobs has been to watch some of the videos and sort of really zoom in and say, okay, where are we seeing these interactions? And there's one that we watched, and all of us were just kind of in awe of it. And it's so simple. It's just a childcare educator with a baby in her lap, and she's, kind of going through this book with him, following his interests so beautifully. And what I was astonished by just watching this really, like sort of intricately, was how she could understand his words that I could not pick up on, right? He would say something kind of babbly. I didn't hear it as a word. And she was like, yes, it is soft, right? And that knowledge of the child, the knowledge of exactly like what he knows and doesn't know in his environment, It was really astonishing. It was like she could speak his language just because she was so attuned to him. So yes, I love that. And you all write in the book something that I actually have sent to friends of mine who have a child right now. And I feel like when you have a baby, you're not necessarily looking for much advice, but
Don't have
there's
the time to read.
no, exactly. But you guys say something in the book about slowing down enough to delight in your children,
Yes.
right? That if you're not feeling all this pressure to like get the flashcards, get them signed up for whatever, that
Yeah.
you can actually delight in your child. And this anecdote about bedtime reading, right, feels like kind of the spirit of that is like, well, how do you make it fun for you? Because if you are acting like it's a chore, yeah, everybody's going to feel like it's a chore.
Right. And
Yeah.
nobody's really going to want to read. I mean, you're doing it
Mm.
out of obligation. Oh, I know I'm supposed to read to you because it's good for you. But
Oof,
then you don't have any fun either. The most
absolutely.
fun is when kids want to hear the same book 1,000 times. The most fun is to do voices,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Nobody else can hear you act like a fool, you know?
Yeah.
It's
Yep.
great for your kids. And then by the third reading, you're falling asleep and they're going, come on, finish. But that
Yes.
happens. Now, I'm going to argue that the mother that you saw, who was amazing, the kid may not have been saying anything, which may have been why you couldn't make it out. I
Well,
think moms make uh, inferences
yeah.
about what they think their kid is saying. And many times they'll catch it. Not always,
Hmm.
but
Well,
I think that's very reinforcing for the kid.
yeah, and that idea, right, of really tuning in and following the child, and even if it is a babble that we don't recognize as
Yes,
a word,
yes,
picking up on whatever it is and saying, "Oh, it sounds like you're saying this."
yes,
That is such a perfect example of extending the child's interest into
yes,
something that starts to become
yes.
syllables and language. And in this case, it was actually a childcare educator. So this was a childcare setting, which made it all the more beautiful that this educator was so attuned to this baby,
Wonderful.
right?
But
Oh,
we
I could
should
talk to you for
all have
hours.
teachers, right?
Say that again.
We all have such teachers and daycare providers.
That is, yes. I think the mission of many of the people who are tuning into this call is to support those educators and childcare providers. Yes. Okay. We don't have too much time left. So I'm going to I want to actually,
On a few more hours with you.
I know, I know.
Oh,
Well,
fun.
it really is. Yeah. I truly could pick your brain all day. I want
Vice
to make
versa.
sure, sorry.
And vice versa.
Oh, um, yeah, this is delightful. I want to make sure that I don't forget to ask you about two kind of timely current things that you're working on, and then we will get to some really good questions that I'm seeing in the chat.
Okay.
So two different things I want to ask you about. The first is Stories with Clever Hedgehog, which I think Jihan can put into the various comment places in each of the live stream
Awesome.
platforms. So we'll share that. We'll also share it when we send out the recording. But tell me more about what that is, why people should know about it, how we can support it.
Oh, I wish we could. Stories with Clever Hedgehog is a website I started with my Ukrainian people. I paid them because I got a grant from the Akhav's Foundation. And
Mm-hmm.
it was a website to help kids who are stuck in war. Who suffers the most when we have war? It's children. So Stories with Clever Hedgehog really allows kids to get away from the war, or
Mm,
if they're in the diaspora, to reduce the amount of stress they have from trying to adapt to a new language, a new school, et cetera, et cetera. So this is in Ukrainian and it's also
mm,
totally in English, but
mm,
it's more than just books. It's games, it's songs, it's advice for parents about how to help kids learn in a fun way. And we've done an evaluation that we'll publish, and kids really enjoy it. And parents, I'm so happy to say this, are very grateful to us for
mm.
doing this in the midst of all this stuff. Now we need one for every country that's at war because we're living in such a screwed up world. And it really is terrible for children to
Mhm.
have to fear and be afraid to go to sleep and have to flee. I don't have to tell everybody
Yeah.
know this. So I am looking for more support for this because my funds from the Akhav's Foundation have run out. And I want to continue to offer this for Ukrainian children as well as for American or English speaking children around the world because it's totally in English as well.
Mm-hmm. We will share it in our newsletter as well. And I wasn't familiar with it, so thank you for sharing
Oh,
it with
thank
us.
you. Thank you.
Yeah, one of the really, I think, interesting things. So at the Trust, we think about ideal learning environments, and many of the approaches, like the curricular or child approaches that we work with, grew in the aftermath of devastation. So when we think about Montessori, when we think about the Waldorf approach, the Reggio Emilia approach, many of these really, really beautiful whole child, commitments to really placing children at the center of a community's life came in the aftermath of war and of suffering, right? And it's, yeah, I share the wish that children did not have to experience this, and what can we do to be supportive right now? Yeah, thank you for sharing it, leading it, developing it. We will certainly share it. Um, you also have a new study
Yes, which I
going.
can't wait
I'm
to
sure you
hear.
have.
But we're going to give a survey. We're just about ready to put this on social media to women in their third trimester because we want to see what child rearing expectations they have and
Mhm.
whether or not those expectations change. I think they will, but whether or not those change when the little bundle of joy actually comes along.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, so keep an eye out for invitation if you're pregnant to join
Fantastic.
us and in the third
Fantastic.
trimester. Yeah.
I gave a talk to some of our colleagues from Trust for Learning last year just about kind of my research and what I was up to. And I just heard from so many colleagues this eagerness to participate and build more relationships with researchers to then connect their families with participation in studies. So we'll certainly share that when it's ready. Um, okay, thank you for sharing those things. I've got a bunch of questions here, so I'm just going to share what we're hearing from people in the
Okay.
chat. So,
Get ready.
um, there is a question here about kind of the distinction between reading acquisition and
Yes.
language acquisition. And we covered this a little bit last time with Kathy, and you all cover in the book. The idea that reading is a different set of skills. Our brains did not necessarily
Yes.
develop to
Yes.
read. We repurpose parts of the brain so that we can. So this person is asking, can you discuss where humans' innate language acquisition ability is useful in reading acquisition beyond the extent of pre-reading vocabulary? As a program developer and Montessorian, I'm curious how to create new early childhood experiences that build the best foundation for reading.
So I would just like to point out that one can learn to read without knowing the meaning of what you are reading. That sounds crazy, but think of all the
Mm,
kids we know who have had bar or bat mitzvahs, who learn to read Hebrew, and most of the time they really don't have much of an idea of what they're saying. It's liturgical Hebrew, and people may just give them a gloss of the whole paragraph, but they don't tell them much about what it means.
mhm,
We don't want readers like
mm,
that learning English or the other any other language that they have to learn to read in. The whole purpose of reading is the extraction of meaning from the printed page.
mhm,
This is a very old definition by one of my major role models in life, Jackie Gibson at Cornell, and Harry Levin in a book that they wrote called The Psychology of Reading.
mm,
It's all about getting meaning.
mm,
If you can just say the letters and how they sound, you ain't getting nowhere.
mm,
So, what does that mean? It means children need to know the letters, but you don't have to go crazy on the letters because they'll pick those up as they go along and in school. What you really need to do is talk with your kids because you need to have the vocabulary that the books will use so that you can understand what's being said. And again, there's no magic here.
mm,
Reading to children, taking them to exotic places like the supermarket and showing them the labels on containers and saying, that says 3 servings. Will that be enough for you and me and your brother and daddy? Oh, wow. Big question. The kids got to think.
Hmm.
Anytime you can point out the utility of written language,
Hmm.
cereal boxes, signs on the highway, you win. Because
Hmm.
kids want to do what adults do, and they will want to read too. So that's part of getting the meaning in and the idea that we can symbolize things that we know. So I don't know if anybody still uses rebuses. I don't know if you remember what that is. It's like if you want to say they had a sunny day, you would use a picture of the sun. I think those were so much fun when I was a kid.
Hmm.
Intersperse pictures with words. It's called a rebus, and
Hmm.
and it really it's fun for a kid to read those things. And if you read those things to kids, you're helping them too have a good time. It's all about
Hmm.
having a good time and not drill and kill.
Hmm.
That's why we say Einstein never used flashcards. There is no
Hmm.
reason to drill kids on the letters. There's only 26 of them, as Catherine Snow has argued. And
Hmm.
if reading was all about knowing the letter names, there wouldn't be any kids who had any trouble. There wouldn't be
Hmm.
dyslexia, right? So
Hmm.
that's like a minor piece of it.
Hmm.
Instead of buying those flashcards, have a good time reading stories and
Hmm.
call attention to the words and letters in what you read.
So I'm having a memory that I had kind of forgotten about. When I was teaching high school, my first year, we had this thing called Drop Everything and Read. And even for 11th graders or 12th graders was this school-wide thing where everybody read for 30 minutes.
Oh,
And
that's
I
good.
remember when I first started, I just had to like enforce it. And I hated it. I hated it because the kids didn't want to read. I was then like the enforcer of the reading.
Uh,
And I finally had the realization that like I was going to drop everything and read. And I just sat with my book that I actually wanted to read in the classroom. I often would sit on the floor and I just was like, oh yeah, I love to read. Let me just do that for these 30 minutes. And everything changed, right? Because the kids, I was not the enforcer of the reading, right? In this sort of authoritarian way. I was just enjoying my book. Yeah.
that's awesome.
Yeah.
There
That was an
still
insight
had
for
to,
me.
there still had to be some kids who were resistant, I would think.
Well, it's interesting. I remember a couple of specific kids, for whom reading was really challenging. And so it just became for me more of an emotional strategy to
Right.
like really enjoy my book and like share how I was enjoying it and then more
Yes.
gently and gradually talk to them about
Right.
like, well, you don't seem to like this book. Like what kind
Right.
of book might you like,
Right.
right?
That's the key. If the book is at an inappropriate level for the child, or
Hmm.
it's about fishing and the girl couldn't care less about fishing, if
Hmm.
the book can be suited more to the child
Hmm.
doesn't have to be suited to the book.
Hmm. Totally. Totally.
Child has to be able to select the book and
Hmm.
read things that they're interested in learning about. Now,
Hmm.
I love the classics, but I don't care if they read comic books. I
Yep.
don't care if they read graphic novels.
Hmm.
I want them to enjoy it. That's what it's all about. And if you can find ways to make that happen, you win.
Yeah.
For high school kids.
For sure. Yeah. Yeah, there's so much to unpack there. We have a question in the chat that I want to make sure we get to. I have an opinion on this, but I will just ask it to you directly. Can you say more about how play-based learning is needed or not in kindergarten?
Oh, it's everything. How did we learn in the past before this tremendous emphasis on push kids forward, get them read? What was it like before? It was like kids playing, talking to each other. They would get the occasional impetus to think about math. They would do blocks, which would increase their social interaction as well as their knowledge of spatial relations. That's free play. Great. We want to teach kids stuff. Great. But let's make it enjoyable so they don't turn off. Now, once they get older, it doesn't mean everything you teach, they have to go, ha, everything is different in terms of what is required. We're not making any blanket statements here. You don't have to teach college physics, ha, ha, ha. But you do have to teach college physics in a way that's meaningful, engaging, active. These principles that we have of learning that we share in the book, they're uniform. They're for everything.
Mhm.
Okay. So you want to teach kids in kindergarten, don't do drill and kill, make it fun. Find, like, you could take cans of soup. They can't obviously be full or have anything on the edges that could hurt the child.
Mhm.
Give them a pile of letters, paste a G on the front of one, a P on the front of one, and a B on the front of one, and say, what do you think? Could you put these letters into the right can? What would they say? Sure. And then they're working away, right? This is how you get kids to know their letters.
Mhm.
Thing we do when we give talks. Ba 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 baran. Ba 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 ba.
Mhm.
We
Mhm.
just did phonics.
Mhm.
Now, we
Mhm.
have heard from our moles in Philadelphia in Head Start programs in the past, I hope it's still not true, that they would spend a half an hour on the letter A. A, A, ah, ah, A, A. Please don't do this to children.
Mm.
There's no reason to turn this into a drill and kill when, like, boom, you can come up with some fun ways for kids to do things. Once they know to read, you can even have them sort by topic.
Mm. Mhm.
It's so fun to think about things you can do as a kid that a game like, and then the teacher can also use the information. If the kid didn't know what's some weird animal, uh I don't know, not an octopus, that's too easy, some weird animal name, and the kid didn't know to put it in the animal pile, this is
Mhm.
your opportunity
Mhm.
to talk about that animal, and the kid learns a new word.
Mhm. Yeah, I love these examples. And for Molly, who asked this question, Children's Equity Project put out a really fantastic report maybe a year ago called Learning, Joy, and Equity, a New Framework for Elementary Education, which is really about extending all the developmental science on play and exploratory learning all the way into elementary school. So feel free to check that out. We have other resources on our website. Unfortunately, it is 2:57, so somehow I have to start wrapping us up. I'll just note some of the questions that we didn't get to, which are really important, are around this continued challenge of the fact that we're not investing in early educators. And so
Right,
early educators are systemically underpaid, undervalued, burdened with incredible responsibility and stress, and doing their best to be
right,
present and nurturing with young children, despite all of that, doing an extraordinary job. A couple of people just pointing out and noting this conundrum that if we're not investing in
right,
adults,
right,
um,
right.
yeah, how do we at least support them to find those
Right.
moments for?
We often think that the scale should be reversed. High school teachers get paid more, but the origins of learning and liking of school take place at the beginning.
Yeah.
And why do teachers leave so much? Well, one of the reasons they leave so much is because the pay is poor, especially in preschool. Preschool, it's terrible. So we have to bring up our standards for this. It's terrible.
Absolutely. You are, I'm sure, among friends on this call
Yeah.
in terms of really investing in the
Right.
early childhood workforce.
Right.
Um, yeah, so everybody, if you haven't already gotten the book, we also got a question. This is maybe a quick one, Roberta. Is this going to be available on Audible or any kind of like audio
They're
platform?
going to make it. They're going to make it on, I don't know if they did already, because I thought it would be so fun for Kathy and I to read it.
Oh my gosh. Oh,
Wouldn't that be fun?
I
So
would
I
listen to the
don't
whole
know.
thing again just to hear you two read it and maybe like add some commentary, as you're reading.
Right. That's our
Yeah.
specialty, we kibitz. So I'm going to write to the publisher our agent too, when I get off, to ask, where are we in this process? Because I
Okay.
think it would be so much fun.
I would love to listen to that. Yeah, we're happy to share that when it comes out. And I think we have just like one or two slides to wrap us up. Thank you, everybody, for listening. Truly, thank you so much, Roberta. This was a delight. And I trust we will be in conversation again, and we could really go on and on and on. So if people want more of this, I think, we can share as much of the science as we're able. So Jiham is just pulling up a final slide. So we have a podcast that we're working on that's really about digging into the science of early development in relationships, this magic moment. So get on our listserv to make sure that you get that when it comes out. And Jihan, is there anything else we want to share? I'll just look at the slides to remind myself. Looks like no. Anything else you want to say as we wrap up?
I had so much fun.
Me too. Me too. We made learning fun. We did
Yes, that's right.
it. Yeah, this was really a joy. And I will let us all go off about our afternoons. Thank you so much, Roberta, and
My
hopefully
pleasure.
talk to you soon.
Take
Yeah.
care. Bye.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.